Political front is where we go to next. There's a lot happening, actually. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi, he's going to deliver his State of the Province address today. And the Gauteng EFF have said they are vowing to disrupt that. I wonder where last we saw that in the halls of government. Oh, then there's South Africa, Russia and China holding a joint military exercise. Also, we'll find out who's not happy about that. And, of course, the budget speech coming up later. So he's had 5 cups of coffee, about 3 energy drinks and a full English breakfast, and he's ready to unpack it for us. I don't even know where to begin. Where else, Lukhona Mnguni, host of On the Spot, would we have seen the EFF threatening to disrupt, and then everyone is very surprised when it actually happens?
A very good morning to you and to our eNCA viewers, by the way. And you'd know that it has happened previously in some provincial legislatures where some years back they tried to create these forms of disruptions. You'll remember in some provincial legislatures, in actual fact, the speakers wanted to, eject the EFF from the chambers because of their attire and so on. What is surprising about, Gauteng and the threat to disrupt is that actually there is a serious, I would say, negotiation process that's happening between the ANC and the EFF, and you're seeing them wanting to cooperate together in certain councils and through these coalition governments in the metro. So I'm not sure politically if that is a wise strategy in terms of, being on the side of performative politics that intend to embarrass the ANC-led provincial government, but on the other hand, trying to work with the ANC. We saw the EFF pulling out, for example, of certain councils in KwaZulu-Natal, and that is seen as a move to swing power towards the ANC. You can't have a schizophrenic political existence and hope that you are going to, have your cake and eat it on both sides, and that's what I think they're trying to do. Effectively, what is going to happen is that they are going to exhaust the mercy and the patience of some people in the ANC, and the ANC will just simply close the door to being able to negotiate power arrangements with the EFF.
And this is going to be an interesting one as we get ready to see what's really going to be the maiden State of the Province address for Panyaza Lesufi. So many people I see on social media, just like Sona, Lukhona, saying, putting bets down almost. How long before the EFF begin to disrupt that? Some are saying less than a minute, so we'll have to wait and see. Can we just talk about, this is interesting, especially for those of us who studied international relations. We've got an international relations discussion on the go, but it's having local politics fallout, which is very unusual. We're talking, of course, South Africa, Russia, China, joint military exercises, but some local governance and local governments not happy with that. What do you make of how, as a country, we should be handling this, and perhaps more importantly, where that leaves us on the international political landscape with these joint exercises?
Well, I think it points us to a number of issues that are unresolved in the South African political terrain. I mean, if you go to other countries, irrespective of which party is in government or which person is in government, there's just an understanding of what the country's, foreign policy looks like, what its priorities are, who the friends of the country can and cannot be, and how do you consistently cater for those relationships and to strengthen them. Of course, I think South Africa's foreign policy in the last while, in actual fact, in 2019, I did an analysis of the manifestos of various political parties, at least the top 5 political parties, and just to see how much emphasis they've been putting on foreign policy in their manifestos when they make an offer to the electorate. It was quite interesting how over time just all political parties sort of get fatigued in terms of focusing on foreign policy. And I understand that, and that's because maybe the national issues that South Africa is facing are just extremely overwhelming, and that's where people want to place emphasis. However, your geopolitics are part of your political reality and repertoire, and you cannot ignore them. And therefore, the less emphasis there is, the less negotiation there is of what is South Africa's, foreign policy post-China. I mean, I know that the Diplomacy of Ubuntu white paper that was published by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in 2020, 2014, if I'm not mistaken, was actually quite an unhelpful paper because it's not clear-cut, it's not directing us to a particular paradigm in terms of how we exist within the geopolitics of the world. And you know, Gareth, that there is a big fallout about this because some international forces, particularly Western countries and the US, are trying to isolate Russia from any forms of relationships, and they've promised sanctions on those who sort of give Russia oxygen and life to exist. And of course, a military exercise of this nature could then, invite some repercussions for South Africa in the sense of sanctions for this or that. But again, I don't think those are easy decisions to make, even for Western countries, for a country like South Africa. And I suppose this time around, what the governing party has decided to do is to emphasize that it still has friends, because remember, we are also the chair of BRICS this year. And as long as we remain part and parcel of BRICS, and now BRICS comes with much greater obligations after the bank was opened and deposits were made and so on. So you want to service that relationship, and you want to create a sense of you can stand for your own sovereignty while you understand what is happening around the world. So yes, I understand that people would say South Africa needs to stand with the people of Ukraine, and that's what we should be doing, condemn the terror of Russia in that country. But like I'm saying, the geopolitics are generally always very nuanced and difficult to negotiate without perfect circumstances at all times.
Yeah, even people with international relations master's degrees can't figure out what's the best way to handle this. Lukhona, very briefly, I'm going to ask you just to give us your thoughts on budget speech. Imagine, if you will, the State of the Nation address was a 3-course meal at a 5-star restaurant, the president ordering more and more social grants, and now, at like the end of an awkward date, someone has to pick up the bill and pay the tab, and that person is the finance minister. He's got a lot to juggle, doesn't have much wiggle room to pay the bill, does he?
And Gareth, I'm certain that it was a dry 3-course meal without any wine pairing because the state does not have money. So you've got to cut your cloth very, very thin. And I think that's the biggest event for the country this week. On Wednesday, the Minister of Finance will give us the sobering reality of our financial circumstances. And they need to come up with a plan to tackle institutions that are quite critical to the running of our economy, and that is Eskom and Transnet. It's not enough to just say they're going to fold their arms. I think everybody will be looking to hear exactly what Treasury has as a plan to deal with the debt at Eskom. You'll remember that Treasury had promised to take over parts of the debt at Eskom to try and free up their balance sheet and so on. And that's going to be very important because effectively at Eskom you have a new leadership, you're going to have a new CEO very soon, and those people must come to an environment that enables them to do some work, and you need money to get that work done. And in fact, the big item that we'll also be looking for is our debt servicing cost, which has shot up now beyond 300 billion rands. And I think it's going to be a very worrisome picture that will be painted. I mean, if you think about it, Gareth, it was probably 5 years ago, I can't remember now precisely, when Prime Minister Pravin Gordhan stood up then as Minister of Finance and said, we are at a crossroads. I think we are now at the edge of the cliff. We're not even at a crossroads. We took the wrong path, and it's now about to cost us dearly.
Yeah, it really is. It's a crossroads with a railway track, and the lines have just come down, the red robots. So the question is, dare we cross it, knowing that railway train is going to come through any moment? Lukhona Mnguni, the host of On the Spot, appreciate your time. A dry dinner is the way that he described it. It's a tough time for the Minister of Finance. There's a lot of promises made by the president, and someone, as I said, has to pick up the bill. That's going to come up in the budget speech on Wednesday. Now, when we come back, it's going to